Today, we're taking a look at the history and evolution of the Emergency Medical Hologram, known as the EMH, but more specifically, the USS Voyager's Tinker, Tenor, Doctor, Spy, Jack of all trades, the Doctor.
I'm a doctor, not a counterinsurgent.
You've probably already realised this, but it's a bit of a long one. We can't skimp on the accomplishments of the Doctor now, can we? So we'll cover more notable ones which made him into the programme we know and love, and look forward to seeing return in Star Trek Starfleet Academy. And who knows, maybe one day again in Star Trek Prodigy.
I'm a doctor, not a butler.
Welcome to Trek Central, I'm your host Captain Jack. Before we warp into this video, if you want to keep up to date on all the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can also follow us on social media for daily updates on the Star Trek universe. As always, please let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, because if you're talking about Star Trek, then we want to hear about it. Okay, computer, activate EMH.
Please state the nature of the medical emergency.
The Emergency Medical Holographic Program is an EMH program AK-1 diagnostic and surgical subroutine Omega-323. It's an adaptive holoprogram developed at Jupiter Station during the 2360s by Starfleet Holo engineers, including Reginald Barclay and Dr. Louis Zimmerman. The latter, being so proud of his achievement, decided to program the EMH with both his physical and, most notably, psychological characteristics. Zimmerman wanted to call his creation Holodoc, but Starfleet Command requested the name Emergency Medical Hologram. The persona, however, was not given a formal name. The EMH could be switched from touchable, effectively be a real person, or intangible. This would be achieved depending on the containment field. Active, he could touch and be touched. Inactive, he couldn't be touched, though his image would be temporarily distorted if anything were to pass through it. Although initially deemed to be a flaw, the EMH had a rather sardonic personality. This was due primarily to the fact it was designed to practice medicine as efficiently as possible. Therefore, enhancements, such as carrying out small talk or knowledge of Earth trivia, were viewed by the programmers as means of cluttering up its memory and compromising its performance. Beginning around 2370, the entirely new EMH system began to see installation aboard the new Intrepid class and Nova class starships, and, a couple of years later, the Sovereign class. All of these were confined to sickbay.
I'm a prisoner of these walls.
They could be transferred to a holodeck or another system capable of maintaining a holographic program. It was still being considered for installation throughout the rest of the fleet. All in all, 678 Mark Is were created. The Mark I EMH was designed and programmed solely as a short-term emergency supplement to the medical team aboard a starship, until a replacement doctor was found. Therefore, it was only meant to function for a maximum of 1,500 hours, or 62.5 days. After this time, memory degradation would occur, or, in exceptional circumstances, to the extent of literally replacing a starship's entire medical staff following a couple of hiccups. And that it did. EMH, more specifically, that of the Intrepid class USS Voyager, was activated not too long after their not so graceful slingshot across 70,000 light years to the other side of the galaxy by the Caretaker Array, which, for story progression, resulted in the death of the First Officer, Con Officer, Chief Engineer, the Chief Medical Officer, and presumably what medical staff happened to be aboard. In ordinary circumstances, that would not be an issue. The EMH would just fill in until an appropriate replacement could take over. This wouldn't be the case here. Initially, the EMH began his runtime with outwardly lousy people skills and bedside manner.
Did you call me to chit-chat, or is there an actual emergency?
Treating what would in everyday situations be considered chaos in calm and collected manner, yet triaging with an unwavering lack of empathy and as such charm as a prostate exam, or anyone with less than a concussion to clear off out the door owing to the abrasive personality programming mentioned earlier.
Are you gonna help this man or not?
I'm not.
Despite the hesitancy, Voyager's relocation to the Delta Quadrant and the lack of a replacement doctor within a reasonable distance necessitated the doctor's program be run on a full-time basis, effectively becoming Voyager's new chief medical officer. Over the years, the doctor greatly expanded his program, acquiring many interests and hobbies, developing close and personal relationships with the crew members, and even fell in love. The doctor's first few weeks as a full-timer on the USS Voyager were not easy for him. He had no control over his activation subroutines, so anyone could willy-nilly activate or deactivate his program. Most of the crew considered him a mere program or tool and treated him as such. In turn, he was curt and rude to them. He was unhappy that he was only used for menial medical tasks and that his comparative genius was not appreciated. He was also vocal at being the last one made aware of events, such as the Maquis, Neelix and Kes joining the crew, for example. It's probably something a doctor should know, considering he'd no doubt be treating them at some point. That said, it wasn't until Kes volunteered to become the doctor's assistant and medical student that his relations with the rest of the crew began to improve. As Kes brought the crew's disrespectful behaviour to Captain Janeway's attention, she asked he be treated with more respect, and granted control access over his own activation subroutines, allowing him to deactivate himself. As it was noted on occasion, patients would leave sickbay and forget to switch him off.
I believe someone has failed to terminate my program.
Though unable to leave the ship, he could technically leave sickbay, and the first instance of this was essentially his first away mission, to the holodeck to rescue Harry Kim, Tuvok, and Chakotay from the Beowulf holoprogram, which had been infected by an alien, when samples of photonic energy had been beamed aboard. Unbeknownst to them, was part of the alien. This also marked the first time the Doctor was injured, sort of, by having part of his arm cut off by Grendel, the character possessed by the alien entity. The Doctor's first experience of personal growth and romance was to Nara Pell, a Vidian scientist in stasis, but was to be treated aboard Voyager, who the phage afflicted. This disease affected all Vidians. He became increasingly attracted following the transfer of her synaptic pathways to a non-deformed, holographic version of her body. Knowing that Klingon DNA could resist the phage, a graft of B'Elanna Torres' brain tissue onto Danara's meant she could be revived from stasis. Despite her reservations about her natural body, the Doctor assured her he would still love her no matter what. He could spend 2 weeks with her until she returned to her people. The Doctor discovered a way to successfully reverse the transporter accident that merged Tuvok and Neelix into Tuvix. You know that instance still sparks a debate to this day. Dare we ask what your choice would have been? Go on, be honest in the comments. Though he carried out his order to find a solution, he refused to be the one to press the proverbial button that would essentially kill Tuvix, a sentient being in his own right, who would not consent to the separation in the first place. Due to all of the new and exciting additions to his program, the Doctor hit the limit of his memory capacity and began to suffer memory loss, leaving him unable to treat Tom Paris, who had been injured in an alien attack. Diagnostic Program Alpha 11 was activated to find a cause to save his program from disintegrating. The EMH core program had been severely fragmented due to being active for practically 2 years, as opposed to the 2 months absolute maximum, which probably wasn't helped by the overexpansion of the original programming, maxing his memory buffers with, and by no means limited to, personality, relationships with the crew, engineering skills, a physical extension, if you catch my drift, as well as several things that he had on multiple occasions stipulated that he was not, then proceeded to become anyway.
I'm a doctor, not a performer.
The Doctor's program problem was solved, basically by merging 2 holo programs, but with the downside of massive memory loss to the majority of learned experiences from the point of activation, to allow the restoration to his intended primary function of just being a doctor. Once he'd been saved, he was right back to regaining those things and totally did not run the risk of repeating that. After all the trials and tribulations he'd been through, being stuck on board since activation, he was finally able to leave the ship. Voyager was thrown back in time to 1996 Earth, only to Captain Braxton and his timeship Aeon from the 29th century. Voyager was, in no uncertain terms, hacked by Henry Starling with a 1996 computer. The Doctor was stolen and transferred to the mobile Emitter, a handy piece of 29th century tech. Long story short, the Voyager crew of course sorted out this little issue, and the Doctor kept hold of it when they went back to the future. Pretty sure that violates the temporal accords, but you know.
Right, Scott!
Even though he was since able to leave the ship, not so many adventures offered the opportunity, so he expanded his range of scenery on the holodeck and explored the idea of having a family by creating a home life for himself to, well, go home to after a day's work in sickbay. He had a wife, Charlene, a son and daughter, Jeffrey and Belle, respectively. Several friends noted his family was too perfect, so Chief Engineer Torres took it upon herself to make modifications to make it more believable. His next time returning home was met with a chaotic house. Klingon music blasting, kids being little shites, backchatting, you know how real life can be, let's be honest. The changes ultimately led to Bell having an accident and an untimely death. While a heart-wrenching moment all around, he avoided the situation at first, but eventually, the Doctor learned the meaning of loss, as had everyone on board that is stranded in the Delta Quadrant, and how it all brought them closer in finding support, friendship, and also becoming a family, because of the pain they'd all shared. So, what use was a mobile emitter outside of leaving the ship? Well, it was a day saver on several occasions. Not only that the Doctor could attend to a patient, make house calls if need be, rather than having to go to sickbay. Though not that much larger than a comm badge, it could store the entirety of the EMH program simply with a command transfer. It allowed Chakotay to hide the EMH program before being deleted. This is when the Nairians commandeered Voyager and relocated the entire crew into an artificial environment. Torres subsequently modified the Doctor's optical sensors to see the portals between environments, and with the aid of another prisoner, Jarlath, the crew reached the Nairian ship and retook Voyager. Though quick thinking and a plot device, holograms and Borg are readily compatible apparently. 7 of 9, the Doctor and Harry were captured by the Hologram, a race which have extreme prejudice against photonics. The Doctor is transferred from his mobile emitter by means of Seven's assimilation tubes and stored in a cybernetic implant, which in turn suppresses her consciousness and allows him to have full control of her body. Yes, I know, and it leads to that gracious moment, you know the one.
You became sexually aroused in my body.
Years later, it was instrumental in rescuing Captain Janeway from the hierarchy. The Doctor was able to use a number of the crew's holographic templates to physically and audibly pose as that person. The emitter was used as a means to change between various forms, as it were. Given a direct order not to exchange Voyager's warp core for her, thus stranding the ship in the Delta Quadrant, the Doctor took it upon himself to masquerade his way to stealing the warp core. I'm not sure what she's worried about. The Master Systems display clearly shows a spare one sitting right there, but it wouldn't have been nearly as dramatic if it were that simple. Plus, it did give some great moments of the Doctor leaping through office windows and showing what a badass he can be when the need arose. Well done, Robert Picardo, you're fantastic. Also in this instance, though shown before when saving Voyager from the Kazon and the Prometheus from the Romulans, the Doctor is capable of lying and deceiving. Probably not something you'd want your Doctor to be able to do, but in all cases, it has been. His core programming to save lives. Now, this is a truly spectacular upgrade, which truly makes him the Captain Jack of all trades, the Emergency Command Hologram.
Activate the ECH.
Acknowledged.
Emergency Command Hologram. At your service.
Originally, it was a radical concept as part of the Doctor's latest self-imposed upgrade, the ability to daydream. When in a daydream state, a nearby hierarchy ship was able to tap into his program. It proceeded to cause not only confusion for them, but him as well, when it led to his perception of what's real and what is daydream to blur. The most common of the daydreams is when the command crew are incapacitated and the Doctor steps in to save the day, topping it off by utilizing the photonic cannon. What started as a dream became reality when the entire crew, save for the Doctor, still on board, and Chakotay, Kim and Neelix, were on an away mission on the Delta Flyer. The crew were abducted, minds wiped, and put to work, believing it was the best thing ever. Meanwhile, the ship was stuck in a nebula, crippled and under repair. It was only the fact that in conjunction with the mobile emitter and his new ECH command level, he had the clearance to do all that he was needed to do and save the day. With a little help from Chakotay and Kim, Neelix was also there too. The Emergency Command Hologram also allowed him to do something he otherwise wouldn't have been able to do, and that is eject and steal the warp core, for the aforementioned trade for Captain Janeway, which again was only possible in tandem with his emitter. Quite a handy pair those two. A fight for the Doctor's legal rights is brought into question when he completes work on a holonovel, Photons Be Free, which paints the crew of Voyager in an unflattering light. However, it is simply an exaggerated version of his life on board. It is published without his permission. An arduous battle ensued, improving his individuality, ambition, creativity, and were not merely simulated traits. He was allowed the right, as an artist, to have creative control over his works. It's essentially Voyager's version of Measure of a Man. Needless to say, with statements from several of the crew, including the captain, he was granted permission over his work, and that all copies of the holonovel were to be recalled immediately. The episode in question, Author, closes showing the EMH Mark Is as being reconfigured and reduced to nothing more than minors, which further proves that no other counterpart that we've seen of the Doctor evolve and expand into the point that they became their own being, but simply being repurposed and reassigned. This would further command that the EMH Mark II supplanted the inferior, which is made apparent when the Doctor visited the USS Prometheus, in an attempt to contact Earth and activated their EMH for helping retaking the stolen prototype ship from the Romulans. The Mark II was also shown to have a bit of an Andy Dickish bedside manner.
Now what?
Taking every chance he got to tell the Mark I how much better the Mark II was, only to realise at the end of it all, experience outranks shiny new every time. In my book, experience outranks everything. If you know what that quote is, let me know. Needless to say, he set the record straight. Oh, and he let Starfleet Command know Voyager was still out there at the same time. In 2375, after the failed LMH program in 2373, and the installation of a Mark II on the new Prometheus class, and likely other new constructions of that time, showing all of those Mark Is working in the mine, it is likely the Doctor of Voyager, and the EMH of the USS Equinox were the last two actively serving as their intended purpose, until the Equinox EMH was deleted, leaving our Doctor the one and only Mark I Emergency Medical Hologram. Or is he? There have been several iterations of the Doctor, from alternate futures, a duplicate, and a backup. The first alternate being rescued from a glacier planet where Voyager had crash-landed some 15 years previous and laid rest to freeze over. He was retrieved by Harry, Kim, and Chakotay to mess around inside Seven's head to allow contact with the past to change their future. And of course, they did with less than a second to a core breach. Another alternate future in which it took Voyager 23 years to return home. Over the following 10 years, he'd continued his position as a Doctor, of course, upgraded to the new uniform for the time, and he met a woman named Lana, whom he married, and he decided that he'd take the name for her grandfather, Joe. The duplicate came about when Voyager was forced to land on a Y-class planet, on which a sentient liquid, known as silverblood, was allowed to copy consenting members of the crew in order to live. They also copied the whole of the ship along with another EMH Doctor. Somewhere along the way, they forgot what they were and where they came from. It wasn't until the upgraded warp core began to degrade the modular makeup of the ship and crew. It ended with only one of the most tragic ends to an episode. Their accomplishments and evolution went completely unknown. Yet another version was brought aboard by the Kyrians, when they discovered a data storage device buried beneath the ruins of Kazeth. It turned out to be the EMH backup storage module. Being such an integral part of the Voyager crew, he was held accountable and to stand trial for the war crimes supposedly committed by the vessel some 700 years prior. The events did not take place in an alternative timeline or anything of the like, so he's technically another active EMH Mark I, just reactivated. It's only some 117 years from the events of Star Trek Discovery's latest season, and the upcoming Starfleet Academy series. Could he have made his way home too? The Doctor's program continued to run after a return home to Earth, and was fittingly assigned to the USS Voyager A, a Lamar-class starship under the command of Vice Admiral Janeway. His welcome return to the franchise throws him back into the fray, dealing with a phasing member of the Voyager crew, Gwyn, but improvising with a phase discriminator to create a temporal stabilizer. Not a permanent solution, but at least it was something. The Doctor saved a copy of the holoprogram Janeway from a USS Protostar, following the whole time travel cock-up situation, to an EMH backup module, after which she was promoted to emergency command hologram status after clearly showing sentience. Okay, suffice to say the Doctor has evolved, achieved and influenced a great deal within Starfleet, so much so that his program was immediately discarded to mining duties, rather being assigned to other positions and projects as any other member of Starfleet would be. Robert Picardo's return to the franchise was a great surprise in Star Trek Prodigy, and now paired with Tig Notaro's Jet Reno, we are surely in for a treat. He's hoping we're in for more than a mere passing the torch moment we've seen before, and has the assertive attitudes when it comes to dealing with the sometimes delinquent cadets, which to us viewers will be hilarious. I'm also getting a feeling of Doctors Rodney McKay and Radek Zelenka type interactions between the two. That'd be kinda cool here.
Dr. Fumbles McStupid over here was in way over his head.
Yes. Now, do you want to try to fix it, or do you want to continue to berate me some more?
I am perfectly capable of doing both at the same time.
What are your hopes for the use of his character in Starfleet Academy? Do you think it could be pertinent to the show, needlessly overused, criminally underused, or just there to pull in the views from other people like us? We'll see soon enough though. This year has flown by, so Starfleet Academy will be on our screens before we know it. If you want to keep up to date on all the latest Star Trek news, lore, and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from our team here at Trek Central. You can also follow us on social media or join our community Discord server. For now, I've been Captain Jack, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Live long and prosper, my friends. Goodbye.